Hey everyone, it's Ben with ALTERRA. Welcome to another deep dive episode. This series is dedicated to understanding the engineering and design that goes into developing the ALTERRA products that you know and love. In this segment, we're learning about the ALTERRA 600 engine. Joining me today is Ira Johnson, one of our off-road mechanical engineers. Ira, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So Ira, the ALTERRA 600 engine is new for ALTERRA, and it's one of the first engines that we've developed in several years. Tell me about what went into the development process for this new motor.
Sure. It is one of the first that we've developed in at least 10 years. The 600 was intended to be a purpose-built engine meant to work with our new ALTERRA chassis and complement the rest of the vehicle ergonomics and handling. We wanted it to be more modernized. We wanted it to be cleaner with lower emissions. We wanted it to be easier to service and to maintain. One of the first things that ALTERRA customers will notice is that this is a standalone engine design. And what I mean by that is that only the engine is here. It's not sharing a crankcase housing with the CVT and the transmission. Our previous engines had a unitized design where those assemblies were part of the same crankcase housing. That served its purpose well, but it also positioned the widest part of the engine right at the rider's foot. This allows us to position the widest part of the powertrain package behind the rider's foot. It's just better ergonomics.
So in the past, we've seen ALTERRA ATVs with 700 engines. How does the 600 stack up against that?
The 600 provides the same power level as the 700, and that goes to the efficiency that was designed into it. The 11-to-1 compression ratio, the 94/86 bore and stroke, it provides a great throttle response. On top of that, the fact that we can have a separate CVT housing gives us more clutch ratio, so the 600 is more responsive and accelerates harder than the 700 did.
So we have the ALTERRA 600 engine laying down on its side here in front of us, but when I see the motor in the vehicle, it is actually tilted rearward slightly. Can you tell me about what impact that has?
Correct, it's on purpose. It's actually tilted rearward 30 degrees, roughly. That does a couple of things. It lowers the CG of the overall machine by about an inch, and it moves it rearward, which benefits the handling characteristics of the overall machine. The other thing it does, this is out the front of the vehicle, being the intake, and the exhaust is out the rear. That prevents all the heat from coming up on the rider, as our previous engines required routing the exhaust underneath the seat, and it greatly simplifies the exhaust design, eliminating heat shields.
Very cool. So tell me more about the cooling of this engine.
Sure. Well, it's a modernized and more efficient cooling system as well. The water pump was designed by us, and the heart of every water pump is the impeller. This water pump provides greater flow, higher flow through the entire RPM range of the engine. What that means is heat soaks are eliminated, whereas after riding hard, for example, and you come to an idle and the engine starts to heat up, that's eliminated with that. The other thing that this engine has is a constant loop bypass system with a dual stage thermostat. What that does is give you a nice gradient warm up for the engine. So that does a number of things. It lowers emissions, it reduces wear and tear on many of the parts, and gives you that nice gradient warm up that you want.
Very nice. Now, when we were preparing for this meeting, you used two words that really stood out to me: automotive design. What did you mean by that?
Well, just implementing a lot of the modernizations that perhaps people associate with modern automotive design. And largely that is in the cylinder head of this engine. The cylinder head on this engine is a dual overhead cam engine with hydraulic valve lifters and a rubber isolated valve cover. All those things go together to reduce noise emissions to the rider. Our previous engines used a single overhead cam and a solid mounted valve cover. They also used a large roller rocker arm with a tappet screw that you use to set the valve lash. All of this led to that distinctive ticking that we just took as normal in an engine. With the hydraulic valve lifters in here and the isolated cover, all of that engine noise is essentially eliminated.
That's all really cool stuff. What other modernizations have been made to the ALTERRA 600?
Well, we already touched on the improved cooling system, and we talked about the cylinder head, which additionally in this dual overhead cam cylinder head, we have large efficient intake and exhaust ports, large intake and exhaust valves. On top of that, we now have a forged one-piece crankshaft with plain bearings versus our assembled crankshaft that was in our previous engines. And another distinct thing that customers won't perhaps notice, but to eliminate piston sound, the cylinder axis is actually offset from the center of the crankshaft. This is straight out of automotive design.
That is all really, really cool information. It's awesome to see that there's been so much attention given to the 600 engine to improve maintenance, performance, and just overall rider experience.
Exactly.
Well, Ira, thanks for joining us today. If you guys want to learn more about the ALTERRA 600, be sure to check out the rest of this series. And if you have any questions, feel free to visit your local dealer or go to arctic-cat.com.